Hey, how's it going guys? Chris here, and after putting a whole bunch of hours into the Star Wars Battlefront 2 Beta, straight off the bat, I'm happy to say that the game seems like it could be a pretty big step up from the last one, in my totally honest opinion. Now, the beta only gives us a small slice of what's to come in November, giving us access to a limited amount of weapons, star cards, maps, heroes, vehicles, and so on. But even with that limited amount of stuff, I still had a pretty good time playing the beta. Mainly because it didn't feel anywhere near as arcadey and simple as the last installment. Galactic Assault was probably my favourite game mode of the ones I got to try out, which is basically the big 40 player one, and in some respects, Galactic Assault has quite a lot in common with Walker Assault from the first game, with one team attacking and the other defending on a large map. Walker Assault was by far my favourite game mode on the 2015 game, so I'm very glad to see something similar return in this one. Because of the bigger player count, it really makes you feel as though you're playing out a scene in one of the movies. And in the beta's case, it's like you're participating in a droid assault on Naboo, which looks really awesome from a graphics standpoint. The true power of Frostbite 3 can definitely be seen here, with all the particle effects and leaves blowing all over the place, to those tiny birds hopping around on the floor. And all of it put together really brings the scene to life, putting you into a believable world straight out of the Star Wars universe. We were also treated to another new game mode in the beta called Strike, which pitted smaller teams against each other on a map based around Maz's castle from The Force Awakens. So here we got to check out the New Order and the Resistance from the newer movies too. From what I took away from it, Strike was a pretty interesting objective focused game mode, which kinda reminded me a bit of the ground section on Infiltration mode from the last title's Scarif DLC. One team must essentially steal the enemy's package and transport it back to another point on the map, or whilst the enemy team tries to prevent them from doing so. It wasn't exactly anything extremely new, but it did rely on quite a lot of teamwork, flanking and protecting the package carrier, all whilst throwing a few Wookiees and Jet Troopers into the mix too, which are really fun to play as, I should probably add. Starfighter Assault, which is basically the space combat stuff, was also a lot more enjoyable to play than the last installment's Fighter Squadron mode, where players just mindlessly flew around trying to gun each other down in some very arcadey dogfights. The new version feels a lot better to play, with more responsive controls and more objectives to focus on as you fly around, which makes for some really epic aerial combat, with both teams working on attacking or defending certain things. And the fact that one part of the mission has objectives within the inside of a ship, which must be reached by actually flying through said ship, is pretty cool. Each starfighter now has its own leveling system and star cards, just like the infantry classes do, and so this adds a new layer of depth to the space combat too, giving players more of a reason to come back for more. Now, along with all the multiplayer modes, I also got to try out the arcade mode too, which was basically just a couple of single player, beat a number of AI controlled players in a certain amount of time type missions, which I mainly just use as a bit of target practice. It was okay, I'm sure some people are going to love trying to beat those challenges, but I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on arcade. I mainly just used it at the beginning when I was getting the hang of the controls and sorting out controller sensitivity and stuff like that. Speaking about controls, one feature that a lot of people are probably going to overlook that I'm ridiculously thankful for is the slightly wider range of settings in the menus, which lets us customise and fine-tune our controls a little bit more than we could in the past, as I really wasn't a fan of the last game's high dead zone setting. But now aiming feels a lot more fluid after turning that right down, making the gunplay on console more responsive, though I guess that's just a personal preference. All the weapons for the specific classes seem to function quite differently to each other, and the fact that they can be modified with special attachments really helps with variety. The weapons didn't seem to be as complex as the guns in some of DICE's other games, like Battlefield 1, though the gunplay still felt a bit more skill based than it did before, and recoil definitely seemed to be more obvious than it was in the first title, which often felt like everyone was just running around in a video game version of Laser Quest. Combat rolls now feel more reliable and responsive too, and they can actually help you manoeuvre your way around and dodge incoming fire and dive behind some nearby cover much more easily. And weapons can now perform manual reloads to cool them down, which makes them feel like you have more control over your actions too, which is a nice feature. Though there is still one small issue regarding the gunplay which seems to have been carried over from the last game into this one, and that's the fact that Hipfire is still a bit too effective when compared to actual aiming, as your accuracy doesn't seem to be too much worse when strafing around whilst firing from the hip. And because you move so slowly in ADS, this can quite often give the enemy an advantage in a lot of gunfights, and should be a lot easier to hit. I definitely think that the Hipfire should have slightly higher recoil as a trade-off for having that increased manoeuvrability, and so in most cases, Hipfire still, unfortunately, seems to be a bit too effective for my liking. Another small gripe regarding the gunplay is the fact that the time to kill also seems to be fairly slow, and this is probably down to a few of the classes having abilities which buff health, and down to specific classes spawning in with greater amounts of health than others to begin with. It can be extremely difficult, and in a lot of cases completely impossible to take out multiple enemies in one gunfight, and if you run around a corner into a couple of enemies on your own, then you're usually going to be overwhelmed, and that slower kill time means that you'll be trading shots for too long with the first guy before you can move over to the second target, who's usually going to end up mowing you down. I found this to be more of a problem when flanking a group of enemies, as I'd run around to gain a tactical advantage, only to get taken out by the second guy once he noticed his buddy was getting shot at. These factors aren't exactly game breaking, and the gun mechanics still seem quite fun and responsive, though a slightly quicker time to kill would probably allow players to overcome a group of enemies a bit more reliably, and let us move over to the next target a bit quicker after dealing with the last one. Now, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is no longer an arcadey token collecting game of whack-a-mole like the first one often felt like, as the token system, which granted special abilities, vehicles and heroes, is now a thing of the past, and it's been replaced with the battle point system instead. Basically, battle points are accumulated over the course of normal gameplay, and throughout a match, there's a variety of different things which can be spawned in, including vehicles and heroes, which the battle points are all spent on. This is a huge step up from the token system in my opinion, as the tokens that spawned into the last game's environments not only looked out of place, but they were also extremely random too. Now, you can just keep accumulating points over the course of a match, and choose to spawn in as a hero when you've eventually earned enough points. Though I did find that heroes and villains were in very high demand near the end of matches, as quite a few players spent the whole game saving them up, and because only a certain amount of heroes and villains can be out in the field at any given time, this means that some players might still struggle to become the hero they want to be, down to other players beating them to it. Though the fact that you can still choose to be a hero when you have enough points, so long as someone else isn't playing as them, is a much more reliable way than the token system for letting players who want to play as the heroes do so when they're available. The new class and progression system also gets 2 big thumbs up from me, as this helps to pad the game out a bit more and give it some much needed extra depth, something which was lacking in the 2015 Battlefront. And it's nice to see that there's a lot more to it now than just being able to equip a few star cards and a weapon and leaving it there, as the different classes now all have their own specific abilities and guns, which are all suited to their role in the game. And star cards are now mainly slight buffs to said abilities, which can be upgraded over time by earning loot crates and scrap. All of these factors combined with a deeper class leveling system and weapon mods is going to give the game a lot more longevity, and actually give players more to work towards, thus play the game for longer and be rewarded as they do so. So bottom line is, I enjoy playing the Star Wars Battlefront 2 Beta quite a lot. In a way, it feels a bit like the last title, but with a lot more stuff going on to make battles feel fresh and alive, along with a much more engaging leveling system that encourages players to continue playing. All of the flashy tech on show in the beta really made it a visual feast, from the gloriously rendered vehicles to the vast array of effects showering the screen like a fireworks show, and all of this was made even more pretty for anyone with a HDR screen. Combine all of this with those iconic sounds blasting over your speakers, and the experience feels even more Star Warsy than ever before. Though I guess it's hard to say right now whether the whole game will be a success when it's released. The fact that there's said to be 11 Galactic Assault maps, and a bunch of other maps of Starfighter Assault, along with a few other game modes to pick from too, sounds like we're already getting a fair bit more than we did last time when the game comes out. Plus when you add the fact that we'll be getting free DLC further down the line, with the possibility of getting new maps, heroes and weapons, which everyone can use, sounds friggin' fantastic. So hopefully, Star Wars Battlefront 2 will be the game that everyone desired. But I guess we'll find out pretty soon. Bring on those droids and General Grievous. So that's pretty much all I've got for you in this one, guys. I'm most likely going to be covering Star Wars Battlefront 2 more when the game finally comes out, so do stick around and subscribe to see all of that stuff in the future. If you played the beta and want to share what you think about it, then let me know by posting down in the comments. If you're a fan of Battlefield 1, then feel free to check out my guides on all the weapons, including the ones from the latest DLC, with more of those coming soon too. But anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in our next episode.